What kind of a show are you guys putting on here today?
You're not interested in art?
No.
Well, look, we're going to do this thing. We're going to have a conversation.
From Chicago, this is Film Spotting. I'm Adam Kempenaar.
And I'm Josh Larson.
My maker told his tale. And I will tell you mine.
Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein comes to Netflix this weekend. It stars Oscar Isaac as the Mad Doctor and Jacob Elordi as the Creature. They told their tales. Now we have our review.
Plus DaCosta's Ibsen update Hedda, Sydney Sweeney in the boxing biopic Christy, and more. It's all ahead on Film Spotting.
Now, run.
Welcome to Film Spotting. Josh, I've learned that Mary Shelley was living in Bath in the south of England when she wrote Frankenstein. That's only a day's drive from your current haunt in St. Andrews, Scotland. I am sure this informed your viewing of the new Guillermo del Toro adaptation.
That's just the start of it, Adam. I have to give you a little Scotland report here. I had forgotten how much of Frankenstein is actually set in Scotland until just rereading the book a couple of months ago. Here's how I viewed Frankenstein. Get this. So Dundee, a town just a little further from me and in Scotland, found out just last week that is where Mary Shelley would go to visit family when she was younger. And that site on the River Tay actually inspired some of the atmosphere and the landscape and the setting for Frankenstein. Guess where Debbie and I, along with listener Ben Page, Ben's a filmmaker and puppeteer I met here in St. Andrews, the three of us went to see Frankenstein. Dundee. I'm not kidding you. So yeah, I had the local infusion in my blood while watching this movie.
Do you think Mary Shelley also saw movies at that theater?
Don't think it was around.
Okay. Well, you were walking in her footsteps, so that essence, that aura should definitely contribute to our conversation about Del Toro's Frankenstein, which is coming up in just a moment. Also, Hedda, another 19th century literary adaptation. DaCosta's latest is an update of Henrik Ibsen's 1891 play, Hedda Gabler. Now, I didn't see it. You're going to talk about that one, but of course, I've seen productions of A Doll's House. I'm pretty sure Peer Gynt, even The Master Builder when I was a student in London. Have I seen Hedda Gabler? No.
Oh,
no.
So close.
Why couldn't it be
you
one
were
of those, Josh?
So close,
yeah,
Adam.
So close. Plus, Christy, starring Sydney Sweeney as boxer Christy Martin, and Peter HUJAR'S Day from director Ira Sachs, a two-hander with Ben Whishaw and Rebecca Hall. That'll be a one-hander, as I'm the only one who saw that film. A quick reminder, Film Spotting is now available as a video podcast. If you're a Spotify listener, you can toggle between video and audio. You can also watch the show on YouTube. I believe, Josh, we are supposed to say like, share, subscribe. I don't know if that actually works or not, but I said it.
I mean, we can try it. I don't know either, or if it just annoys people and away from doing that because they hear it so often. Let's give it a try, see what happens. See if we can get a few more likes and some comments.
Yeah, there you go. You can find the video episodes as well at filmspotting.net on the main page, or for past episodes, go to filmspotting.net/episodes.
But first, Frankenstein. In the spirit of Baron Victor Frankenstein confessing his twisted tale to Captain Anderson, I'll profess that I struggled to engineer an approach for this setup. Something related to the source material? Only one small issue. Inexplicably, I made it through high school and college without an instructor ever assigning Mary Shelley's 1818 Gothic novel, Frankenstein or The Modern Prometheus, nor did I ever assign it to myself. Okay, not a big book guy, apparently. Maybe I could connect it to some of the previous movie adaptations, I thought, until I visited the Frankenstein in Popular Culture and list of films featuring Frankenstein's monster pages on Wikipedia, and several hours of scrolling later, decided I was way out of my depth. My recollections of Mel Brooks' Young Frankenstein, the underwhelming Kenneth Branagh's Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and Tim Burton's Frankenweenie
probably weren't going to cut it. Surely I could fall back on the tried and true auteurist angle. After all, what filmmaker has a more fervent relationship with monsters than Guillermo del Toro? Here again, I'm lacking some substance. Sure, all 7 of his features released during the film spotting era, from 2006's Pan's Labyrinth to his most recent, 2022's Pinocchio, were reviewed on the show, and I was positive on all 6 that I considered, but fantasy has never been my specialty, and 4 outstanding Del Toro titles remain: Kronos, Mimic, Blade 2, and Crimson Peak, before I can call myself a completist. Even I wouldn't have to strain, though, to find the symmetry between Pinocchio and Frankenstein, or more accurately, Geppetto and Dr. Frankenstein, and their respective creations. After the loss of his son, a grieving woodcarver fashions a new boy who comes to life. I'm going back to Wikipedia here. Geppetto wakes up and is frightened by Pinocchio. He becomes fed up with Pinocchio's antics due to his newborn lack of self-control. I don't know, sound familiar, Josh? It wouldn't have challenged the brilliant intellect of Dr. Frankenstein, played with monomaniacal brio by Oscar Isaac, but think of all the money Christoph Waltz's Henrik Harlander, the arms merchant who backs Frankenstein's grand experiment, could have saved had he simply gotten his hands on a wood sprite to conjure Jacob Elordi's creature to life. Then I realized, you're the one who put Disney's Pinocchio on your top 10 greatest films of all time list, both the 2012 and 2022 editions, which led me to this lowercase e epiphany. Not only do you love Pinocchio, it turns out that you've spent some time considering Del Toro's work and what his depiction of monsters expresses about the human condition. And you've devoted even more time to thinking about the creature and how he functions as a monstrous mirror, reflecting an image of ourselves, quote, doing not what we know we should do, but what we know we should not, end quote. Of course, I'm quoting from your book, where you were referring specifically to James Whale's 1931 Frankenstein and other universal horror films of the era. So, Mr. Fear Not, enlighten me. Watching this Frankenstein, did you learn anything new about our capacity for sin? Or, despite what I understand to be some fairly significant departures from both Whale's pre-code version and Shelley's text, did Del Toro's rendering offer plenty of arresting visual flair, but little revelation?
Well, I always love a book plug in a setup, Adam. So thank you, first of all, for
You're
that.
welcome.
And yeah, you're quoting me and I'm quoting the Apostle Paul in Romans there. So I don't want to take too much credit about we do what we wish we did not do. I did have that in the back of my mind, surprisingly, while I was watching Frankenstein, and how it might echo in this instance when it comes to the Shelley novel and the movie versions, our capacity to play God, right? It's right there in her subtitle, essentially. And traditionally, I found Del Toro's version interesting on this front because it does take, to my mind, a little bit of a twist on this that I'm curious to get your opinion on. Traditionally, it is that Dr. Frankenstein has chosen to play God specifically by attempting to create life, right? So we're looking at the very beginning, Genesis here, trying to usurp that power of actual life creation. And of course, in every version, it goes disastrously wrong. Overall, I think this Frankenstein, Del Toro's Frankenstein on this front, it's not necessarily the most interesting thing about the movie. I'll get to that later. But on this front, I think this Frankenstein is less about the creation of life, that urge, than it is the prevention of death. And that's maybe a subtle nuance, but I think a very compelling one for where we are in this day and age. Think about the early demonstration scene where Victor, before his medical colleagues at this point, right? He hasn't really completely gone off the deep end, but he's giving a demonstration to them, trying to animate. This is one of the best scenes in the movie, I think. These body parts, it's not even a full figure yet, that he's kind of stitched together, and animate that in front of them. During this, I think this is where he says it, he boldly suggests that, quote, God is inept. And the reasoning there is because he's allowed something like death in his creation. So he sees that as a flaw that he has the hubris to fix. We also have a new figure compared to what we get in the book. You mentioned him, Christoph Waltz as Harlander. This is the rich patron who is supporting Victor's experiments. We learn he's doing this, and I don't think this counts as a real spoiler, but he's essentially doing this because he's dying, and he wants Get Out style, Jordan Peele's Get Out. He wants to have his intelligence placed in the creature, the monster's body. So this was really interesting to me. It was different from the book again, but timely, because think about all the discussion of things like artificial intelligence and the like. We're kind of in this new era of transhumanism. We have these billionaires who think that they can push science into eternity for specifically themselves, not necessarily the rest of us. And so we're living with these modern day Harlander figures. And so, yeah, the capacity for sin here to be is not trying to create life, trying to cheat death, rather than accept it as this condition for our fallen humanity. I think Frankenstein, Del Toro's playing with that here, which is, for a property that's been made countless times, to find even that little nuance to investigate and include, I think it's to the movie's credit.
So you were a great co-host there and film critic in that you responded very thoroughly to my actual setup question. But now I just really need to know whether or not you like the movie, Josh. Could you do me that favor?
Yeah, sorry. That is one of the many things I liked about the movie beyond those things you hinted at, the style, the production design, the filmmaking.
Okay.
We'll get to that. And as I said, there's another thematic thing that I found incredibly compelling. So yeah, throwing it back to you, what'd you make on this capacity for sin question and the creation of life question? But overall, here's the question, given your setup, did this leap the fantasy hurdle for you? That you've kind of said is something like, it maybe takes something a little extra for you to really embrace a movie of this nature. Was Frankenstein able to do it?
I'm out of my depth again on the question I posed to you, which is why I posed it to you. I don't have a great answer on the capacity for sin question, and I do think you covered it well. You're right about the prevention of death element, and I can't compare that really to other versions that I don't remember very well or haven't seen, or the Shelley text, though I do feel like I remember feeling this as I watched it, and it has been now, I think, 3 weeks, unfortunately. So I have my notes, but I feel like the movie has started to dissipate in my memory. I feel like the movie loses that psychological bearing for the character. And I think you could argue against what I just said and say that that's part of the point, is that as that character loses his way a bit, we lose that underpinning, which has to do with his mother and how he really is pushed into this field and wanting to play God because of not guilt, but really because of a loss that he wants to never feel again. I really do like what you said about Harlander real quick before I get into more detail, because there was a little touch. I don't know if you caught it or if I'm reading too much into it, but he has an absolutely despicable father. And there is at least one scene where Del Toro seems to really dwell on his father during one of their lessons. And I think there's maybe even 2 instances of it. And his father is handing him a glass of milk. And later, that's mirrored by Harlander in 2 scenes. And the thing is, Harlander at this point seems to be completely on his side, a genuinely sympathetic benefactor. We don't know what you said about him until later in the film. And while that's true, we also know that there has to be a catch. And he alludes to that early on when their deal is struck. And the serving of the milk, to me, was a little bit of foreshadowing that, like his father, this relationship, this partnership might be part of his undoing at some point. So I like that touch. In terms of the fantasy question, that actually is a nice transition into what I wanted to say about the film. I am not as high on it as you, though I was very high on it at the beginning. And as I've now said a few times, I had no real bearing. And I didn't know what to expect from the beginning of the movie. I remembered so little of the Branagh that I was a little shocked to read on Wikipedia some of the plot details, and that it apparently did have some of that North Pole Danish expedition in it, and Frankenstein, Dr. Frankenstein narrating his wild tale to Captain Anderson. It had some of that conceit, though not to the extent that this movie does. And watching it, I thought either Del Toro made that up or he was being more faithful to the text than most adaptations have been. And it turns out the latter is mostly true, at least when it comes to that framing device. And I can say that because I took 9 of my film criticism students to see this movie at the Chicago Film Festival at the Music Box. And the student who apparently drew the short straw and had to ride home in my vehicle, sitting in the passenger seat, had read the book very recently. So had a lot of thoughts on the movie and had a lot of thoughts in relation to the book. And so was sharing those thoughts, but I also got to bounce a few questions off them. So I got a little bit of a taste of that.
Yeah.
But Josh, at the very beginning, I was hooked, in part, again, because of the unexpected, for me, expanse of the story. And the expanse, I think this is 2 shows in a row now we've used the phrase mise en scène. I think we've upped our cinephile quotient here, our pretentious quotient. But that giant ship trapped in the ice, Del Toro clearly establishing Captain Anderson's hubris that foreshadows Frankenstein's, pushing his men past their breaking points, laboring to release the ship in service of his vision, his mission, the imagery of the creature in the distance on the horizon. There's a shot that is at dusk where you get the blue, yellow, orange, black hues and just this tiny figure of the creature on that horizon. And then that shot of the creature, I'm thinking of the shot when it's just covered in ice and the ship is now in the distance and the creature's in the foreground. And there's just enough of an angle. I think about the great advice that David Lynch's John Ford gives the young Spielberg in The Fabelmans about how you have to have the horizon somewhere other than in the middle, right? And it's just at enough of an angle that it gives that frame a real dynamism. And the color. In the weeks since I screened this at the Chicago Film Festival, I did see a social media video where Del Toro goes into detail on how he color-coded, as you would expect. He color-coded all the sections of the film and all the characters of the film. Of course, that provided depth that I didn't catch on the first viewing. But the broad strokes of those color choices were clear and so striking on that first viewing, from how green is used and matched to Frankenstein at certain points and places, red to Mia Goth's character as the mother, and blue to her Elizabeth, and in the Arctic, those icy white, blue, and gold hues. I found it so enveloping and immersive. And I'll go to the red just for a second. Josh, there's another shot that is stuck with me so clearly from the film when his mother dies, and even just the production design of the casket, the way the white, almost ivory looking, it looks like a robe folded in on her, and you only see the outline almost of her face, and the red around her, almost like it's a frozen pool of blood, and there are men standing around her, 4 of them, and with their feet and the black robes, it is almost as if it, from a composition standpoint, it looks like a swirl. It looks kaleidoscopic, and it also draws your eyes downward in the frame. It's an overhead shot, but it also almost like the Kubrick technique that I'm forgetting the name of, when it draws your eye, to the end of the frame, except it's doing it in a vertical way instead of in a way across the shot. It's filled with frames like that. Yeah. And exactly like the Captain before Frankenstein, I sat there before the screen just waiting to receive Del Toro's story.
Yeah, I mean, the gorgeousness on display here is ridiculous. And what I think about in terms of that coffin is what you describe, but also the fact that they're made of like this stone, essentially. And there's an opening for her face laying in there, the corpse's face. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
that is then covered by a stone mask, which I don't know if that's, drawing on a tradition that exists or if it's an invention of the production designers and prop designers here.
Right.
But it's one of the things I'll remember most about this Frankenstein. And yeah, we could probably go on and on about the costuming and the production design, and especially Mia Goth's character being, interested in insects, particularly butterflies, and every dress she wears mimics the unfurling of a butterfly's wings in some way, or even a little headpiece she has that curves around her face. It's just incredible on that artistic aesthetic level. Now, I'm sensing that you're saying all that to set up an enormous butt, and maybe we'll just go there, and rather than me jump in with something different that I really liked about the movie.
Okay. Well, 1 point perspective, by the way, is the Kubrick shot that I was thinking of, and this mimics that, but in a way that's a high angle shot. In the back of my mind at this point, there was this little asterisk, and I tucked it away, hoping it wouldn't be a concern, but I couldn't completely overlook it. And the question was, and again, not being familiar with the source material, how are we going to get to the Arctic? What series of circumstances will justify this journey emotionally, psychologically, but also physically, maneuvering these characters from Europe to the edge of the world in the mid 1800s. I was in, and I stayed in for a good portion of the movie, but I think I can pinpoint the exact moment where Del Toro lost me. And I mean, the narrative lost me. But I do think we may need to get into spoilers to really make my point. So I don't necessarily want to go there yet, but there was, suffice it to say, there was a point where Del Toro's narrative lost me, and it felt like, I guess the way I could sum it up, Josh, is it felt like, even though, of course, the movie is not made, or I doubt the movie was made it was not shot in the order in which the narrative unfolds. So it's not as if they put all their effort into the beginning of the film, though, of course, it was put together however it was put together. Even that was probably not put together in the order in which the narrative unfolds. It was probably put together in pieces. It felt to me like so much care and effort and time was devoted to that opening sequence, which I loved, to the flashback to the past, which I loved. The one we're referring to with Mia Goth as the mother, the backstory of that character, to those scenes with Oscar Isaac as the younger doctor, with all of his brashness, and he's trying to upend the scientific community, and even the part where he's really trying to create this creature, and the back end felt so rushed to me that it undid a lot of what I thought the front end was setting up.
Okay. Let's return to that when you can talk about it a little more in detail. And yeah, I think I know where you're going, and I think I might partially agree. And maybe we differ on, the fatality of that maybe instance of disappointment in terms of the narrative. Here's the thing that I love most about this movie, and it's actually connected, even though I saw it about a week and a half ago now, and have had time to write a rough draft review and so forth. But I love that Producer Sam's newsletter, which is out by now to Film Spotting family members, I just saw today myself, is touching on this idea of the Gothic and Gothic films connected to Gothic literature. He's talking about this in the newsletter in terms of Del Toro's output and actually Tim Burton's output, and asking, readers to choose between the two. If you're not a Film Spotting family member, by the way, you're missing out on these newsletters, so you should really join filmspottingfamily.com. That's how you can get this from Sam every week. So I loved that he took this tack, because here's what I appreciated about Del Toro's Frankenstein, Adam, and we're going to go into a little bit of literature here in literary history, but you are a book guy, so I think you'll enjoy this, and I think you'll have some thoughts on it. What the movie clarified for me in terms of Del Toro, who is often and rightly thought of as a Gothic filmmaker, is this is the instance where something else, another impulse in his filmography, was allowed to flower into full bloom. And that is Romanticism, the literary tradition of Romanticism, which is, somewhat parallel to the Gothic tradition. And of course, that makes sense it would happen here, because when you look at how Shelley's novel was born, it was born partly out of her time with two romantic poets, Percy Shelley and Lord Byron. And so this is a novel that is absolutely Gothic, but swimming in those waters. And Del Toro is a filmmaker who's absolutely Gothic, but has been swimming in romantic waters, I think, probably throughout his career. But the first instance I can think of we really saw this was The Shape of Water, where you have something that is Gothic in look, but reaching for something more sublime, for something more transcendent, which is what would be more ascribed to the Romantics, right? And here I'm watching Frankenstein and realizing I should have realized this the instance it was announced that he was doing Frankenstein. He has pushed Shelley's novel, to my mind, even further into the romantic, because he's the one, you pointed this out in your setup, he's the one who looks at monsters as lovely creatures, right? So this has gloomy settings. It has macabre dismemberments. It has this Gothic stuff, but it has in its creature, it has a heart that yearns for an ecstatic life. And he ends this film with a quote from Byron about a broken heart that will, quote, brokenly live on. And so watching this movie, really actually thinking about it more afterwards, because it's such a sumptuous aesthetic movie. I didn't have a lot of these thematic considerations while I was experiencing it, but it was more thinking about it afterwards, that it is this flowering of the romantic in his work. And here's maybe where we can move towards performances a little bit more, because I think it's all rooted in Jacob Elordi's performance as the creature, which is this romantic expression of this figure. I thought he was incredible in what is maybe one of cinema's hardest roles to pull off, just because it's so unbelievable. It can so easily be silly. There's a reason we have spoofs of it. And man, I was just kind of enraptured with what Elordi did with this, following Del Toro's lead, I think, towards that romantic direction.
I agree completely on both counts, and this will allow me to transition into praising the film, but it will also lead to another frustration. I was skeptical about pretty boy Jacob Elordi playing the creature. Was that fair? No, not
He's great
really.
as
I've seen
Elvis
him in
Priscilla. He's
I've
great
seen-
as Elvis.
I've seen him in exactly two things, Josh. Priscilla and Paul Schrader's Oh Canada. No, not even Saltburn. I haven't seen it. Three things if you count his stint hosting SNL, and I feel the same mixed to negative way about all three of those things I've just mentioned. I'll never be skeptical about Oscar Isaac in any role, because I think he's one of our great screen actors. Yet here I was walking out of the theater, and here I am now proclaiming that the best performance in this film by far is Elordi's as the creature.
Nice.
He has his own act of creation. He has to create mostly just through movement this being that is both recognizably human and unlike any human we've ever seen. I hate to evaluate acting so crudely, but it's so easy. I think this is what you're getting at too. It's so easy to imagine a performer trying to play the creature just like a very overgrown child, or Bambi on ice. Those long, thin legs, barely wobbling along. And Elordi conveys all the necessary physical immaturity, but also carries such a spiritual weight on those spindly legs. I was surprised by the relative fluidity of his movement, whereas it would have been more obvious to play it totally jagged and choppy.
Yeah.
That element's still there, but the performance isn't overwhelmed by it. And of course, the longing behind his eyes, his gentleness, you absolutely understand why Elizabeth would be drawn to him. Separating out any kind of romantic attachment,
Sure.
you understand why she is drawn to him. But also when he needs to let loose as the monster, Elordi also summons the rage very effectively as well. And so this praise for Elordi, I agree. I think it's the strength of the film, along with a lot of what Del Toro is doing visually. And this disappointment with Isaac, or disappointment with how Isaac is directed maybe or conceived with just a bit too much gusto, gets at another aspect of what frustrated me. And you've said it, but I'm gonna quote you again. In your book, you said, if anything, about the 31 version, you said, if anything, my sympathies lie with the poor creature, given the legendary Boris Karloff's dignified performance, all sad eyes and limp limbs. I'm never really afraid of Karloff's lost lurching orphan. Rather, it's Dr. Frankenstein himself who survives the film, who serves as a haunting reminder of my own tendency to think that I can do God one better. Del Toro clearly reads the Frankenstein story the same way you read that, which isn't surprising. His work has always revealed that humans are the real monsters. But his affection for this monster is so overwhelming that it softens the edges of his vision, simplifying the complex, volatile dynamic between creator and creation that should drive the film's emotional and dramatic core. I think that's where it's undone a little bit. Not only am I not sure we need a Frankenstein, a movie Frankenstein, where the creature actually verbalizes to Frankenstein, and by extension us, you're the monster. If and when he does say it, and he does here, that needs to hit us as viewers as hard as it hits or should hit Frankenstein. Or at minimum, it has to intensify some existing strong tension. And here, Frankenstein by this point, certainly, but even before, is so obviously the monster whose moral compromises have ceased being compromises that we as audience members, or speaking for myself anyway, as an audience member, has been conflicted about. The creature is just a little bit too angelic. Frankenstein is too demonic. There's not enough blurring of those extremes to make it as compelling as I think it needs to be. Definitely not enough, and this helps get at my first point, definitely not enough to launch the final act and the emotional resolution between the two that Del Toro tries to offer us.
Okay, so a lot going on there. One thing that supports your point of view is, and maybe this came up with your student on the car ride back about the book, but the creature / monster in the book is more monstrous, like takes murderous acts that are far more appalling than anything we see here. That supports your point. It muddles things a little bit, right? In our relation to him. So I can see that. Now, that would not have worked with what I think Del Toro is doing here in terms of moving this towards the romantic necessarily. So personally, it doesn't bother me. The Oscar Isaac performance is a curiosity. It's entertaining. I don't understand the choice though of making him this cocky heartthrob. I mean, half of his experiments are done shirtless, which, fine, no complaints there. But in terms of the envisioning of this character, I'm trying to understand what they are going for. I found the relation to be a little more fruitful, the relationship between creature and Frankenstein. However, because there is a tenderness that is there from the very beginning, and the push and pull for me is watching Victor Frankenstein follow that instinct and then follow his instinct to move away from the creature and care for him in any way. There's a line in this where I believe he says something like, I never thought about what would happen after creation. And maybe that's the key to this vision of Frankenstein, because that is why he is the playboy. The playboy doesn't think about being the dad. He just thinks about, what it takes to become a dad, that act. And similarly, this Victor Frankenstein is only thinking about the consummation, the experiment, and not necessarily having to wake up with an infant in the middle of the night. So I think there's some of that that's going on. I will defend, though, the third act. And again, maybe this will move us into spoilers because there are some exchanges there between Victor and the creature that I found quite moving. But I agree with you, they're not necessarily entirely set up by what we've gotten before in a previous section.
Well, before we get to that, it's amazing how, I suppose, after doing the show, as long as we have together, we do not discuss any of this ahead of time, and yet we seem to set up each other with the points we want to make. I wanted to say, Josh, that where I certainly had sympathy for Victor, and where I also was really provoked by the film in a way I didn't expect to be, is in those first moments after this creation comes to life. That line that you said, but even without the line, Frankenstein appearing at the foot of his bed and him having to process that range of emotions from fear to elation / pride to then, now what? Now
That's a
what?
good moment.
Walking him downstairs, chaining him up, all that work. Think about all that work, the emotional, intellectual, financial, the investment, your life's work, essentially. And really, you can think about it as your life's work from the moment you've been born, all the training, your mother's passing, right? All of it's led to this. All of it's led to you creating this, and you do it. Now what? And the thing is, it mirrors on a much grander level, but on that expansive scale, it mirrors what having a baby is like for parents. What it is like for parents to have babies, and some have a much more difficult time of it than others, with a lot more financial investment, right? And have to go through a lot more of a struggle, no matter how equipped you are. And I've always been grateful or felt fortunate that I had a wife who was an OB nurse. I couldn't have felt more comfortable because I couldn't have had a wife who was more comfortable and prepared to take care of a baby.
Sure.
Also, I had 4 younger sisters, so I grew up having babies around me and felt pretty comfortable already in that way. But with all of that said, there's still a moment where you get discharged the first time and go, wait, now what?
Oh, yeah.
Now what do I do?
Oh, yeah.
I'm responsible for this thing forever. And I hadn't thought of it, as I said, going into the movie, but sure enough, this is something the student told me when I brought this up on the way home. There has been a lot of reading of Frankenstein as a postpartum novel, as you would imagine. And Shelley apparently lost an infant after childbirth and had multiple difficult pregnancies. So that's an element that is there. It's certainly there for the interpretation. And it was something that the movie made me think about.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of a fascinating twist on envisioning this Victor Frankenstein as the parent figure. I think this is part of the emotionality that Del Toro is bringing to an unexpected place, to a monster movie, which he's done many times before.
Do you have anything else you want to say, or do you want to get into spoilers?
The other interesting thing, maybe before we get into spoilers, is Mia Goth, as you mentioned how it wasn't a romantic relationship, right, between her and the creature. And I think that's important because Mia Goth's Elizabeth, in some ways, the foil.
Subtext.
Yeah, but it could be the point of the relationship, and I don't think it is here. I think she's more importantly a foil to Victor because he is. I talked about him talking about God being inept. And how does Elizabeth describe things? She talks about God's design when she starts to see some of Victor's early experiments, or when she's talking about insects, right? And I think what she shares with the creature is a capacity for wonder. And this is what Victor doesn't have, because it's partly why he lets go of the rope once the creature is born. That's the moment for wonder, to look and stand in awe at this being, but he's just more invested in creating it, right? Whereas Elizabeth shares the sensibility of we see the creature in that wonderfully designed basement. I guess it's a morgue, but it's also like a butcher shop, essentially, where he's chained.
Mm-hmm.
And it has this gutter running down the middle of the floor, mostly for blood, the blood to run out of the castle, but occasionally water will stream through it. And the creature has this instinct to drop a leaf into the flow of water and be delighted by its path. That's what he shares with Elizabeth. The fact that they take joy and delight in such moments. These are romantic moments. So I think her character, who is, not in the novel, kind of a variation of a very minor figure in the novel, I think her character is key as both the foil to Victor and the partner in that way to the creature. So yeah, I think Goth is instrumental and very good in this.
You, the great Victor Frankenstein, you made a mistake.
I created something truly horrible. Not something. Someone.
With that, let's get into some spoiler territory. I feel like I need to do it anyway to explain what ultimately held me back with this film. And maybe that's the only reason why we need to get into it. I don't know if there's things you feel like you need to get off your chest, Josh. I feel a little bit like, I fear anyway, that maybe I've now set it up too much, and I don't know if I can deliver, because you're expecting me to make a case for why this film ultimately doesn't work. And it's not like you're going to agree with me anyway on this point, because it sounds like you're all in on this movie. Frankenstein's a winner for you.
Are you negative? Are you
Okay.
going negative on this?
This is a movie, Josh, where based on the beginning of the film and maybe even the first half, this is a movie I know I'm giving a very positive letterboxed rating to. And as we sit at this moment, I am a 2.5 star rating.
All right. I'm going to get that. I'm going to get that half star from you, though actually I'm probably not, because arguing with you is not the way to get the half star. It's if my case up to this point didn't make it, it's hopeless.
Sure. Well, here it is. And this is the thing about the movie going experience, is that we can even agree on things intellectually. But if we saw the same movie and by the end of it, we didn't have the same emotional experience, if narratively it didn't deliver, that's what I'm left with. And that's what I'm thinking about ultimately when I'm doing the superficial work of giving it that star rating. And so my big issue, or the biggest thing holding me back, I said, I had that little asterisk where I'm thinking, and sure, maybe this is just me. Maybe I get too caught up a little bit on logistics, where I'm thinking early on, wait a second, how does this Frankenstein story get all the way to the Arctic? How are we even here? Okay, that's in the back of my mind. And then as it's going along, I'm thinking that it's simplifying this Frankenstein. I don't know at this point about any of this stuff that's in the book, and that it's way more complicated, and that Frankenstein is, murdering people left and right in the text. I just know that on screen, I felt like it was too simple, and there wasn't enough of that push pull for me to really feel like it delivered in a complicated way. Well, those two things collide at the exact moment where the creature tells Frankenstein, "You're the monster," which follows. This is a point of departure, I understand, from the book, where it's Dr. Frankenstein who kills Elizabeth and blames the monster. But in the book, isn't it the creature who actually does kill her out of an act of vengeance because he's mad? He's mad at the doctor?
The figure that she's kind of, the corollary for,
So this in the movie initiates Frankenstein's chase of the monster all the way to the Arctic. And even if you can get past the suspension of disbelief stuff. Stop yourself from asking too many but wait how questions, which may or may not include how the genius Dr. Frankenstein somehow hasn't fully processed that the creature can't die. Not from any gunshots anyway. Yet he keeps buying bullets and guns and trying to shoot him. Even if you can get past that, I only feel, this goes back to my point, I only feel complete allegiance to the creature. And I have no investment in what's driving Frankenstein's pursuit. And just purely from a narrative standpoint, my lack of investment and those creeping, that creeping suspension of disbelief, those issues, they stem from how briskly the movie needs to get us to the Arctic. And what I felt, Josh, I felt like it was rushing to that resolution. After all that time, I know I said this, but after all that time, that great time it spent, the patience setting up the story within a story framing, all the Danish men the creature kills, all the time we spend back in the past, young Victor with his mother and the tyrannical father, all the world building parts and the character building parts that I enjoyed. So much of the runtime is spent there. And then the conclusion, to put it in Seinfeld terms, I think Del Toro yada yada's the ending. I felt like he yada yada's the ending. Finally, we get these two stories, these two narratives, the two perspectives colliding. And that moment on the deathbed should be powerful. It should be powerful. And I didn't feel it. And I didn't feel it for all these reasons I mentioned that just were taking my investment in the story out of me. It sucked all the narrative energy from me. The more the film went on, I didn't buy any of the chase. I didn't buy any of the chase or how it tried to solve it in the end.
Yeah, and I'm not going to be able to retroactively insert that emotional investment in the finale for you. To your point, I'll say something heretical too. Is I think Shelley's novel is not as expertly constructed in this way as maybe the reputation has. It's a difficult novel in terms of the change of perspectives, the level of letters you're subsumed in. You know, it's the moral question at its heart and the fantastic vision at its heart that I think that has held up its reputation, and rightly so. I think it's brilliant for those things. Mm-hmm. But in terms of the plotting you're talking about and the narrative, makes it one of the most difficult properties to adapt. And I don't know if that's why it's continually adapted. Someone's waiting to crack it, or if it's because my instinct is it's more that vision is so alluring, right? The idea she had, the way she described it, the passion with which she gave the voices to her characters, all of that is to the novel's credit. But in terms of this structure and the narrative, it has always held me up when I revisit the novel and given me pause. So I don't think you're entirely wrong to react to the film adaptation in this way. But I did have a different experience with that emotional investment. And for me, I did not mind so much that I wasn't as invested in Victor Frankenstein, because this movie had gotten me so invested in the creature. And so the question for me was less about Frankenstein's end and how the creature was going to respond to this life that had been given to him, the choices he was going to make. And in that sense, I found the ending quite powerful. And there is since we're doing spoilers here, the line for me was not so much the "you are the monster," but again, a different choice Del Toro makes. Victor, I forgive you. I mean, this is something that's bringing us in a totally new direction, as is the choice for the creature to not leave the scene as he does in the book and set himself on fire if my memory, or at least say he's going to do that. I think my memory is a little fuzzy on that, but we essentially are come to understand that, he is no more at the end. Here, what does he do? He pushes the boat out of the ice, saves the remaining men's lives. And the last thing he does, Adam, is a romantic gesture. he looks up to the warmth of the sun. And I guess that is where I found my emotion, was in that experience, that choice of the creature, that romantic expression. It's not a defense of how they handle Victor Frankenstein necessarily. I can still see why that might have left you wanting, but where I was and where my own heart lay with this creature's experience, it was, it was pretty enrapturing, actually.
Yeah, and I do love those final moments. I love the touch of freeing the ship. I love that final glance and the warmth of the sun. Those really are nice. Obviously, I still think the movie thinks it's very important that father and son have that moment together, and that moment of forgiveness, and the fact that it didn't deliver because there wasn't enough of a complexity to their relationship. Yeah, it left me wanting, but I'm glad that it paid off for you, Josh. We agree certainly on Elordi and his performance in this film, and he will be in the running for me as well when we talk about the best performances of the year. Frankenstein is currently out in limited release and available exclusively on Netflix. If you've seen it and agree or disagree with our takes, you can email us feedback@filmspotting.net. We may share some of that feedback on a future show.
Adam, I mentioned the Film Spotting family in our discussion there. How do you feel about thanking a Film Spotting family member here for a moment? Should we do that?
I love it, especially when it's international. Those are always fun.
Yeah, that is great to see. And this is not only a Film Spotting family member, but Clara del Olmo from Madrid, Spain, is a Family Plus member. So that highest tier you can join as part of the Film Spotting family. If you're on Letterboxd, as Clara is, you can find her at CLZSPN. Now, we always have a questionnaire that new members can fill out if they choose, and Clara did that, so we're going to share a little bit of that here. She wrote in saying, I needed something to keep me going through the endless treadmill slogs at the gym, so I went on a quest to find the ultimate film podcast. After a deep dive online, your show kept popping up like some kind of podcast holy grail. Figured, why not give it a shot? Turns out that was probably one of the best decisions I made in a while. I've been hooked since episode 681, Lord of the Rings 15th anniversary / top 5 Lord of the Rings scenes. The real kicker? Finding out Adam hadn't seen the last 2 movies. I mean, what? I had to see what it was like to experience the epicness of LOTR through the fresh eyes of someone seeing them for the first time. Spoiler, it was hilarious and warm at the same time. I was laughing from minute 1 and just knew I'd found my perfect podcast match.
Now, Clara just missed something here. She missed an opportunity because she talked about finding some kind of podcast holy grail, but then talks about the Lord of the Rings. She could have gone with some kind of Sauron thing, the ring. That metaphor could have worked, right, Josh? Instead of the Holy Grail?
That's true.
Yeah,
I
like this.
Look at you schooling people on their Lord of the Rings references. Now that you're a fan,
maybe my fantasy bona fides, right? I've earned them
exactly.
Clearly, Clara has empathy for me, or maybe it's just sympathy for me, because when we asked a favorite review or segment, she says, I loved the A24 draft so much as I felt the pain from Adam when mean old Josh, those are her words, I see it there, mean old Josh took Lady Bird. Since then, I was very into the draft structure.
Yeah. You might have been doing a little editorializing there in Clara's words, but you know what? This does remind me that we just did another draft for our Film Spotting family bonus episode, our cruise draft. And yeah, family members might have that in their feed already. I think
they do.
I think I did you dirty, and I did you dirty in that one too, didn't I?
Yeah, I don't want to spoil it, but there was a Tom Cruise pick that I thought I would get in round 4 or 5. And you did some homework apparently, and I'm glad you love this movie now as much as I do. I did not think you'd take it. It turns out, though, that Zach in Chicago, you could call him mean old Zach because he took 2 of your choices that you wanted.
He was ridiculous. I think we're in process of maybe banning him from the family, right? Isn't he maybe
we're
considering kicking him out for his behavior?
Rescind. Yeah, if he wasn't such a nice guy, we would definitely do that. And his money's green, so we we'll still take it.
point.
But that was fun. Zach in Chicago was a fantastic family member to have that Tom Cruise draft with. It was the three of us plus Sam Van Halgren. I think Sam is the one who is currently winning the poll because family members get to choose who won the draft. Josh, do you have any idea who's in dead last in that draft?
Wait a minute. Sam is winning the poll?
Sam's winning the poll. Yes. Sam is.
My memory was
Cocktails and dreams, baby.
He torpedoed.
Yeah.
his
I kind of thought that too, but the more I looked at his picks, his first three are really solid. And clearly they are carrying him to victory.
Wow.
So
okay, I'm astonished.
You are not faring as well. You are not faring as well.
Am I in last?
Josh, you are in last currently.
Okay,
but
that's fine. I gave this one up.
Voting is early. So,
as I say in the draft, I took a particular approach that was just a me. It was a me first approach, not a voter first approach. So I'm glad to see that's panning out.
You go with that. Yes. It was a fun draft, and if you're a family member, you get that bonus content every month. We love doing those drafts, so we hope you seek it out. We thank Clara for being a Family Plus member and for listening all those years. In addition to keeping us doing what we're doing, your family membership comes with perks like those bonus shows, but also you get to listen early and ad-free. And when we say listen early, I mean, we don't want to disrupt your routine if you're a Friday morning person or maybe a Monday morning person, but Sam and Joe, with some help from Joe, of course, Sam's been knocking these shows out sometimes like Thursday morning. We're dropping them in your feed.
I have noticed that. No kidding. They have been putting in the work, and they're doing, as we said at the top of the show, there's video elements involved now, yet they're still managing to get these things out quite early for our family members. So that's like a significant benefit for sure.
It is. Yeah. The weekly newsletter, which you talked about in our review of Frankenstein. You also get to be part of the Film Spotting Family Discord, which is a blast. There's over 400 Film Spotting listeners. Lots of channels there devoted to all sorts of subjects. You can learn more about joining the Film Spotting family at filmspottingfamily.com. And we will remind you that another way you can help a show like ours, which, yes, we've been around a long time, but we are still an independently produced show. We depend on your support via things like membership, but also spreading the word. And you can do that by taking a minute to give us a review or rating us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It does help us reach new listeners.
Hedda,
Yes?
this is what you wanted, isn't it? Money and the house, the party.
Charming. I love your laughing.
Director Nia DaCosta started her career with the indie thriller Little Woods in 2018. It starred Tessa Thompson. You were a fan, Josh. Also, you were a relative fan of her forays into franchise filmmaking, 2021's Candyman and 2023's The Marvels. She's back with Hedda, which she wrote and directed. Also back in the title role, Tessa Thompson. Hedda is DaCosta's adaptation of Hedda Gabler, the 1891 play by Norwegian playwright Henrik Ibsen about a bored newlywed whose former lover is competing with her new husband for a prized academic position. DaCosta updates the setting to 1950s England and makes the former lover a woman, played by the great German actress Nina Haas, who you may know from Tar and Christian Petzold's Phoenix. I said you were a fan of Little Woods and a relative fan of those other two films. If I'm not mistaken, you can tell me if I am. I looked this up on your website, and Josh, I saw the exact same star rating for all three films. 3 stars. Are you going to depart from that on Hedda? Is this a film that is going to maybe go up to number 1 on your DaCosta ranking, or is it right there with the others?
Yeah, it's right there in that universe. I mean, this is just a good filmmaker doing interesting stuff reliably across a range of genres with a range of material. I don't know that we've seen the best of Nia DaCosta yet. I'm looking forward to that. Hedda is, equally solid, I would say. I don't know. I think I did rank her films on Letterboxd. I think I might have still have Little Woods at the top. The performances there are just so good, and the imagery that DaCosta gives us in a familiar indie narrative, I would say. are incredibly strong. Hedda, yeah, another good one. Another good one from Nia DaCosta. Now, you described already the way she scrambles, race, gender, and sexuality. Very interesting. A lot of implications to that. But what I found most compelling about her take on this, Adam, and I have not seen a production of this play, am not that familiar with the source material, so I don't know if this is in there at all, but Tessa Thompson's Hedda here is almost demon possessed in her depiction, if not downright demonic. Now, we know that DaCosta has delved in horror with her Candyman remake, right? So maybe this shouldn't be shocking, but I noticed early on that the soundtrack has these drums that are almost like sacrificial type drums. There's this hissing or sighing that's very much used in horror films, these insinuating sighs, I would say. And then Hedda's manipulations here of everyone around her, they're framed like a tempter so much. She's promising sexual favors at one point. Another point, she's, encouraging someone to drink deeply from bourbon, even though she knows it's going to be disastrous. There is an image, a great DaCosta image of a gun Hedda offers to a character. And we see it in this close-up of their hands, the gun passing hands before a roaring fireplace. So all of this is just, adding to this idea of Hedda as this almost possessed figure in the way she's manipulating people. Now, Thompson's performance, I'm sure it's going to get a ton of praise, maybe be considered one of the best of the year. I think she's good here. I think it's pretty focused on the deliciousness of this evil and playing up that part. You mentioned Nina Haas. That's the performance in this film for me as in part of the gender swapping. As you said, this rival professor to Hedda's husband, Hedda's former lover. Man, she arrives at the party, at Hedda's party, like this goddess. And it's part of a musical moment. I'm not going to detail because it might be for our year-end wrap party where we do music moments of the year. It might be one of those for me. But she arrives at the party with this air, and then Hedda chips away at it as the night goes on. And part of the, I guess, evil deliciousness of this movie is watching that fight between them, the back and forth. So I'm curious now that I've sat with this, had my impressions, to see what others think, especially those more familiar with both the Ibsen play and those who maybe have more nuanced thoughts about the race and sexuality and gender mixing that's going on here, because I'm sure there's a lot to dig into there as well. So Hedda, check it out. I think, Tessa Thompson will probably be coming up, maybe not necessarily on my list of best performances of the year, but I bet a good number of other folks will have her there.
Hedda is definitely one I will dig into before all of that end of year talk. Hedda is available exclusively on Prime Video. Hedda battled social conventions. Josh, boxer Christy Martin, literally battled in the ring. Let's get to Christy.
You must be the lady I've been hearing so much about.
Yes, sir. It's an honor to meet you, Mr. King.
Now tell me about yourself. Jesse here says that you fight in all pink.
I'm from West Virginia.
What's that got to do with pink?
Nothing, sir. I'm just telling you about myself.
Yeah, pink was my idea.
Christy is director David Michaud's biopic about Martin, a professional boxer in the 90s and into the 2000s. Sydney Sweeney plays Martin, whose career was plagued by abuse and drug addiction. Adam, I know that you've been teaching a course on sport and film, so you've been immersed in this subgenre of recent months. I guess that's where I'd like to start, is just to hear where Christy falls among the stratosphere of these sports films.
Well, not only just sports films broadly, but most recently in the class, we talked about $1 Million Baby, and we've been talking about the feminine archetypes in sports film. So very much thinking about female boxers on screens. And one of the things we talked about is the way, and there's a lot that's been written about this, but we've talked about how that film portends to be a fairly transgressive portrayal of a woman on screen because it's about a female boxer and it puts her at the forefront. But I don't think this is necessarily controversial for anyone who's seen the movie. You can get into the finer details about how this is the case, and there's a lot to dig into, but it's really the Clint Eastwood character's movie. And that undoes a lot of the potential transgressiveness of the film $1 Million Baby. Here, it's Christy's movie, and you could say, well, does it ultimately, in a way, become a film that's just as much about her husband, played by Ben Foster? Or is her character defined just as much by him as the character in $1 Million Baby, Maggie, is defined by Frankie Eastwood's character? And the answer might be, yeah, it's similar. The difference, though, is that Christy is the victim of abuse. She's the victim of domestic violence. This is a movie in which that's part of what the film is detailing. It's about a character who is dominated by her husband. And not only is Sweeney's performance very forceful, but Ben Foster as Jim is the type of character, and he gives that type of performance the subtlety it needs, where the first time he says to her, just in the kitchen of their apartment at this point, before she's really hit the big time and made any money, when he says to her, "If you leave me, I'll kill you," he has enough sense as a performer, and Mishad has enough subtlety as a director not to make that this grotesque moment, not to underline it dramatically, because that's just another moment to that character. That's as matter of fact as him saying, "I'm going to go wash the car." And that's how the movie treats it. And it becomes something that's a refrain that, you know, it's something he says to her hundreds of times over the course of their lives, the next decade or 2 decades that they spend together. And we do hear him say it a few more times, and it becomes more pointed and more violent. But you understand that even though her character might be wrapped up in his character, that's the essence of this film. And like Christy herself, the movie's redemption comes in the second half, when the boxer's focus turns to reclaiming her identity rather than winning in the ring.
I spent half my life hiding. It's my house. It's my things. It's my gym.
I've seen a few comments here and there that say the movie, and some like the movie, Josh, but either way, some have commented on how much it does hit sports movie or boxing cliches. I think it goes against some of those cliches in the way I just mentioned. But I think what else is interesting about this film, and it goes back to the quote you heard just as we were coming out of the trailer. The idea that not only is Sydney Sweeney playing this character, this real life character, Christy, but Christy, it turns out, as the movie portrays her, was always playing a character. She was playing this character wearing pink. She was playing this heteronormative character that she never was. She was portraying the character that America needed her to be, her husband needed her to be, demanded her to be, that her mother demanded her to be. And when the movie is focused on that, of course, the beginning of the film is going to follow some of the sports movie cliches because it's her pathway out of poverty. She's going to have those fight scenes, and that feels very familiar. But especially in the second half of the film, some of those scenes and that reclaiming of her identity, those moments are chilling. And that ultimately was what made this movie worthwhile for me. And I'll say about David Mishad, some of us seeing his name attached to it, not that he's a director who I necessarily have seen all of his films and thought he's this tremendous auteur, but I remember quite liking Animal Kingdom, his debut film, and thinking, why is he doing this sports biopic movie? This doesn't seem like the kind of movie that he would do. And then, of course, as I am especially watching the second half of the film, I'm thinking, this is the guy who made Animal Kingdom. This is the guy who made a film about families and family violence and treating family violence as if it's a matter of fact and an everyday occurrence, and also portrayed a mother character, Jackie Weaver, in that movie, who will do anything she has to do to protect her family. In this movie, Merritt Weaver plays Christy's mom, and she's a very different character. I don't think she's as interesting a character or giving as interesting a performance necessarily, but in her mind, she's doing everything she has to do to protect her family. The pain that she's inflicting on Christy is protecting her and protecting her as well and her family, projecting the image that she believes she has to project. So for me, there was a very clear through line from Animal Kingdom and some of Mishad's other work through Christy. So ultimately, I do think Christy is worth seeing, especially as well because Sweeney's going to come up in discussion of best performances of the year, and I understand why. I don't know that she's going to necessarily make the cut for me, but it is a very good performance.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask, because despite all the, publicity she gets, I actually haven't seen a lot of her work on screen. I did watch,
I haven't either.
I think it was like a Netflix movie, Echo Valley, very small. There was no attention given to it. She's opposite Julianne Moore there. I mean, not the greatest movie, but she's incredibly good in it. So yeah, I was curious to hear how she was in something that, as you say, is definitely being set up for awards consideration.
Christy currently playing in wide release. Next week, we are going to get to the latest from Yorgos Lanthimos and his muse, his star, Emma Stone. It is Begonia. We will also talk about Kelly Reichardt's The Mastermind. That's another one that I think I saw at least 2 weeks ago, but Josh, you're finally going to get a chance to see it. That one stars Josh O'Connor, so we're going to give it some time
I've got a double
I'm
feature.
excited that you're going to get to see it.
Double feature plan for the weekend, Adam. I hope I'm doing this right. I'm doing The Mastermind first, little meal break, then Begonia. So it seemed like the later night film to me, Begonia, but I don't know. I'll find out.
Yeah, that might be fair. Then there are other films opening that we hope to see. The new one from Jafar Panahi, It Was Just an Accident, and Lynn Ramsey's new film with Jennifer Lawrence and Robert Pattinson, that's Die, My Love. So it very well could be that you will hear talk about all 4 of those films on next week's show. We just don't rest here on Film Spotting. We will also have results from the current deeply flawed Film Spotting poll, asking you to choose the second best, just a burning question everyone needed to know the answer to. What is the second best Robert Zemeckis movie?
We're going to decide.
We gave a Sacred Cow review to the director's first best, Back to the Future, on last week's show. If you haven't voted yet, and if you haven't left a comment yet, you can do that at filmspotting.net. And if you would like to see what upcoming shows we have planned, you can go to filmspotting.net/episodes.
Exciting news, Adam. It's been a little while since we've had an official Film Spotting meetup, and I've been here in Scotland for a couple months. It's time I meet our UK friends. Not going to do the first one here in Scotland. I hope to do maybe one at some point there, but instead I'm going to be down in London in December. And I thought, well, one thing I've got to do is put together a Film Spotting meetup. I did one back in 2017, and I don't know, we probably should never do this, Adam. I don't want to offend any of the meetups we've had over the years, but if I were to make a top 5 meetups, we've been doing this long enough now. London, 2017 London would be on it. That was such a blast, a great turnout.
I heard it got a little crazy.
Well, yeah, I would not repeat it. I would not repeat it at this age, because we started at the BFI, very respectable, nice table, everyone around the table talking. Somehow, I mean, memory is hazy at this point. We ended up at, I believe it was a Puerto Rican bar, not too far away, restaurant/bar, continued the conversation there. And somehow, I blame this on listeners, we ended up at a disco far into the night on the other side of the city. Irresponsible parents. Debbie and I had the kids back in the Airbnb alone. We did not plan to be out that late. Needless to say, it was a lot of fun. So yeah, going back to London, not to recreate that, to be much more responsible, but still to hang out with Film Spotting listeners. Here's the date. I do have that now I can give to everyone. It's going to be Thursday, December 11. Location is still to be determined. I do know earlier that day, I'll be checking out. We got our tickets. The Wes Anderson exhibit at the Design Museum, which I think is just opening here in the UK. So I'm going to be checking that out earlier. And then that night, Thursday, December 11, hanging out with Film Spotting listeners. Stay tuned for those location details. We'll probably send them out via the newsletter to Film Spotting family members. We'll put it in the show notes for everyone. And yeah, I'll let you know as soon as that is nailed down.
You know, the gauntlet has been thrown now. I can't let it stand that you're the obviously cooler host. So the next meetup that I have, whenever that is, it's going to be an all-timer. It's going to be a rager.
Yes.
It might go on for days. Okay. Someone's going to benefit from everything Josh just said and did. It's going to be crazy.
Adam, we want you to survive it. So let's not get carried away.
Who's up for it? Let's see what happens. Okay. We do have another mention for our Mastermind prize pack. We're partnering with Mubi on this. It features items from the film's fictional Framingham Museum of Art. For a chance to win, all you have to do is send a note to feedback@filmspotting.net. The subject line should be Mastermind Prize. And in the body, all you have to do, you don't even need to provide any explanation, but we don't mind if you do because we'll probably share it on next week's show when we announce the winner. You just have to tell us your favorite Kelly Reichardt character from any of Kelly Reichardt's movies, your favorite Kelly Reichardt character. We've gotten some good responses, Josh, so far, like Kurt, Will Oldham in Old Joy, Lily Gladstone, the rancher in Certain Women, King Lou. We love King Lou from
King
First
Lou.
Cow as well. All you got to do, send that email, feedback@filmspotting.net.
No votes yet for my pick, Emily in Meek's Cutoff? I mean, come on.
Not yet, Josh, but that doesn't mean they won't come in. We'll see.
Quick note about our sister podcast, The Next Picture Show, looking at cinema's present via its past. They have a new pairing. Very exciting. They're looking back at Fellini's 8.5 in order to pair it with Radu Jude's new film, Dracula. And Adam, I would be over the moon about this. Dracula, first of all, horror related. You know I'm in. Jude, the director of last year's Do Not Expect Too Much from the End of the World, which we both, I believe, had on our top 10 lists. Is that right?
Yes, we did.
The only thing holding me back, I've heard this is like at least 3 hours. Have you heard similar?
That's the problem. So yeah, I have a link for it and I've had it for a few weeks. The problem is I think it's 2 hours and 59 minutes long. And as badly as I want to watch it, as badly as I need to see the new film from Radu Jude, there is just no way right now I can see a 3-hour film. So I'm going to have to book the time soon. It's just not going to be right now, Josh.
Well, the Next Picture Show folks are better critics than we are, so they are on top of it. If you want to get some talk about Dracula, you need to download these episodes, which you can do every Tuesday, and you can find them wherever you get your podcasts. All right, time now for Massacre Theater. More proof that we're not the best film critics or film actors. This is where we perform a scene, and you get a chance to win a Film Spotting prize. Last time we massacred this scene.
What are you doing here? I just came to make sure that you were all right. You did not. You're trying to horn in on my source.
How come you get to meet Deep Throat? I'm the one who actually saw that movie. Hi, I'm Carl Bernstein.
You're supposed to be checking phone records.
I did. It gave me a headache.
Stop whining.
I'm not whining. I'm explaining.
You're whining.
I'm
We've
at
talked about this.
That was Will Ferrell and Bruce McCullough in 1999's Dick, written by Cheryl Longan and Andrew Fleming. Fleming also directed. That massacre was part of our top 5 Robert Redford movies. It was a show we did a couple weeks ago. There is always a tie-in, so why that scene from Dick?
Here is Glenn Eric Hamilton in Seattle Glenn's first time answering a Massacre Theater challenge. As you said during the show, one tie-in is obvious: Woodward and Bernstein, Redford and Hoffman's characters in All the President's Men, or Will Ferrell and Bruce McCullough in Dick's bizarro recounting of Watergate. Beyond that, there are contrasts, maybe the comedy journalist's lust for fame, contrasted with Redford's real-life ambivalence about celebrity, or Redford's willingness to share the spotlight with co-stars versus Ferrell and McCullough constantly trying to cut one another out of the scoop. I'm really reaching. This movie is a favorite in our home. Everybody loves Dick. Like Looney Tunes educating me on movies from Hollywood's golden age, Dick is how our teenager understands Watergate. Thanks for such a fantastic tribute to Redford, and congratulations on 20 years of excellence. Neither of you smell like cabbage. Writing in to salve Adam's wounded ego. Seriously, these segments give me a lot of joy, and I don't write in more often only because I assume that everyone's saying that already, and I've assumed that the hat's been more full than advertised. Thank you, Glenn.
See, it's working, Adam. You're Can I call it a wine campaign? It's getting more Massacre Theater entries. I also like Glenn's approach here. Have we seen this before, where rather than going with connections, he's going with contrasts? I mean, this is opening up, the entries are going to come flooding in now. This is opening up a whole new avenue for Massacre Theater.
Sure.
All right. We also heard from Michael R. Hartman in Brooklyn, New York. The scene was from 1999's Hilarious Dick. The most obvious tie-in is it's a parody of All the President's Men, which was discussed endlessly in the Robert Redford Memorial as one of Redford's best movies, not named 3 Days of the Condor. Possible secondary connections stretching here. Redford famously played Death in an episode of the original Twilight Zone, and a number of actors from Dick, Terry Garr, Harry Shearer, and Dan Hedaya appeared in the 1980s Twilight Zone reboot. Don't remember this. Don't worry. No one else does either. Michael could be making all of this up as far as I know.
No, he's not, because I think during our top 5, I referenced the Fresh Air conversation with Redford that I caught parts of. And that was either his first TV appearance or one of them. And they played a clip from it, him playing Death.
Please, open the door. I need help.
You're lying to me. I know you. You can't fool me.
Help.
The entire conceit of it, I believe, is that a woman is so afraid of dying, she's afraid death is going to come for her or whatever. She never opens her door or anything. And then somehow he convinces her to let him in her house or something. And of course, he's actually the Grim Reaper.
It isn't me you're afraid of. You understand me. What you're afraid of is the unknown. Don't be afraid.
But I am afraid.
The running's over.
And that's him. Redford's playing Death. And it's an early episode of The Twilight Zone. It sounded fascinating. So I think it's available on YouTube. I could be wrong. Here's Sean Means from the Salt Lake Tribune. I went looking for other connections between Redford and the Dick cast, but didn't find much. Dan Hedaya, who played Nixon in Dick, did appear in A Civil Action, for which Redford was a producer, but did not act. There is this, though. In 2014, Redford and Ferrell collaborated on a humorous video as a fundraiser for the Colorado River Project.
The Colorado River is one of the most loved and hardest working rivers in the world. But we've overused it. Most years, the river dries up even before it reaches the sea.
Redford recorded a serious PSA encouraging an effort to raise the river by releasing more water into the Colorado. Then Ferrell countered with his own PSA, urging instead that engineers move the ocean. It's a testament to Redford's environmental advocacy and his ability to laugh at himself.
Hello there. Hello there. I'm William Ferrell. Recently, we've been hearing some talk of a little problem in the Colorado River Delta. We got old Sundance riding around, trying to raise the Colorado River and restore its flow. And I say, do we really need more river? I mean, hell, we got plenty of ocean. Let's move it. Let's reconnect these things the old-fashioned way, the American way.
Wow. We listeners are doing some Woodward and Bernstein level digging here, some journalistic investigation to make these connections.
Good
Let's
point.
share one more email we got from Chad Sanders. When Dick came out, I was baffled as to who this movie was made for, besides me. Dunstan Williams might draw a young crowd, but it's doubtful they'd be interested in a Watergate movie with serious deep-cut references to a 20-plus-year-old movie they'd never seen. Likewise, I felt that folks who lived through the Vietnam era probably weren't lining up for what the video box seems to promise is a teen comedy. It felt like I, a high school journalism teacher who screened All the President's Men twice a year for my intro students, was the sweet spot for this movie's demographic. Not only did I catch every nod to All the President's Men, they knew I'd go bananas every time another Kids in the Hall or SNL alum would show up. Not to mention Inga from Young Frankenstein and Nick Tortelli. I can't imagine there are many people who've seen Dick as many times as I have, and the number of people who've seen All the President's Men and Dick as many times as I have got to be just one. I know the Massacre Theater answer probably 25% of the time, but I usually don't email you. This felt like a requirement to take the time to submit, even if it meant missing the field trip lunch to McDonald's to do it. This is a reference to the movie Dick, a scene which people who've only seen it 7 times or so may not remember. Wow.
So I don't mean to put you on the spot, Josh, but I find that often you don't get some of the pop culture references that I make or Sam makes because I don't know. I think your parents either had great taste and raised you properly, or, you know, you were just sheltered as a child. You can look at it either way. But Nick Tortelli, do you get that reference when Chad wrote it?
I'm picturing
I think
Dan
that's one you
Hedaya,
could get.
but maybe that's just
You're right.
He's already
You're
been
right.
mentioned. Okay.
Cheers. Carla's husband on Cheers, Nick Tortelli.
There you go.
Did you ever watch
we watch
Cheers much? Great show.
Every week we watch Cheers.
Okay. Well, you were right. See, it was in your brain. It was back there in the subconscious. Okay.
Thank goodness.
Reach into the film spotting hat and pick out this week's winner.
Our winner is Matt Price from Pittsburgh.
Congratulations, Matt. Email feedback@filmspotting.net and we will set you up with your very own Film Spotting t-shirt, Film Spotting tote, or trial membership to the Film Spotting family.
The sound goes through the cable to the box. A man records it on a big record in wax. But you have to talk into the mic first. In the bush.
We move on now to this week's edition of Massacre Theater. And Josh, we like to joke about all the preparation we put in to these little renditions that we do. And this time you get to do even less than normal. Is that right?
We have some technical difficulties. Yes, a peek behind the curtain. Usually our preparation involves just before performing Massacre Theater, watching the scene that Sam in most cases has chosen for Massacre Theater. I'm, as I've said, in Scotland. I normally don't have an issue with this, but right now I'm being told that I can't watch the scene because I'm in the wrong country on a certain streaming service. So I'm going in pretty much blind. We do know there's one, let's just say, key performance to this scene. And because you've been able to watch it, it falls to you to carry the scene. I'm going to do my best in the secondary performance.
And it is a secondary performance. There's definitely a straight man in this scene. And you're going to play that role. And I'm going to do my best with the other role.
Lord help you.
I guess I'm ready if you are.
And
I don't know what's going to come out of my mouth, Josh.
Hopefully at least the words on the script. Here we go. And
hopefully.
Action.
Did I do something wrong?
No.
Then why'd you just go cold on me?
I don't know what you mean.
What'd you see?
I didn't see anything.
You're lying.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are. I know because I feel things very deeply.
Look, I got to get back to work, all right? I'll see you later.
When?
What?
When will I see you?
I don't know, Ruby. It's just an expression.
You're not going to take me to Europe, are you? Tell me the truth. What did I do wrong?
Nothing. Calm.
No. Why are you leaving me if I didn't do nothing wrong? I don't understand. I thought you liked me.
I do like you. I just...
Tell me the truth. Why are you leaving? Why are you leaving me? What'd you see? Why'd you change?
You're scaring me, Ruby. And scene. Wow.
I don't know if that was intense enough.
Fate was with us, Adam. The scene technical difficulties, it fell to you, and you gave one of your all-time Massacre Theater performances.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Maybe it's up there. I'm sorry that people get to watch that too on the on the video. We did change the name to try to make it a little more difficult. So no, Ruby is not the character's name in the scene. We look forward to reading all of the entries. Hopefully we'll have a brimming hat. We think you can come up with the tie-in to this week's show. If you know what film we just massacred, email the movie's title and your name and location to feedback@filmspotting.net. The deadline is Monday, November 17th. We will select the winner randomly from all the correct entries and announce it in a couple of weeks.
I say, is Allen Ginsberg there? And he says, who's calling? And I say, it's Peter Hujar. I'm supposed to photograph you for the Times.
Peter Hujar's Day is the latest from director Ira Sachs. He made 2023's Passages and 2014's Love is Strange. This is an adaptation of sorts. It's based on a 1974 audio-taped interview between writer Linda Rosenkrantz and photographer Peter Hujar. Rosenkrantz is played by Rebecca Hall in the movie, Hujar by Ben Whishaw. Those are two names, Adam, that I think makes both of our ears perk up when we see they've been cast in a movie. So I'm assuming they make this worth watching. Is there more to this than something that's centrally focused on the actors?
There's more, but there's certainly a big reason why you should see it. Calling it a two-hander is a little bit of a misnomer because Hall's Rosenkrantz is placed mostly into the role of listener, but very active listener who does sprinkle in questions. And I'll get into this more and more praise. I will have more praise for Hall and how her character is conceived. But I will also note that Whishaw, Hall's chemistry, but really Hujar and Rosenkrantz's chemistry is an essential element of the film. It is Whishaw, though, who carries the movie in terms of the dialogue and has such an interesting challenge because yes, it was audio tape conversations, but my understanding is that the audio tapes never actually surfaced. What was found were just transcripts of these conversations. So Whishaw and Sachs are recreating conversations just based on words on a page. So the level of naturalism that Whishaw has to convey is greater than your typical script. And he does it with such casual acuity. It really is a wonderful performance. And you have to keep in mind that Rosenkrantz's project was mundane by design. I equate it to this. I teach a podcasting class most semesters, and the heart of the episode is having the students produce a pilot episode, and they have to do an interview. And every semester, it never fails, I have one or two students who propose interviewing a student athlete. And the topic is, I want to talk to a student athlete about what their everyday routine is like. And when they're pitching those podcasts, or when students are pitching, I always suggest to them that they have to know what their big question is. What's the underlying question that you're asking every guest? Imagine that you're doing this show for the next 10 years. You're doing 200 episodes, whatever it is. Every guest you'll ever have on the show, whether you actually ever verbalize this question or not, it's the inexhaustible question that justifies your podcast. What is that big question? And the problem is the first couple of times students did these interviews, as I feared, there wasn't really a big question to explore. The interviews were just like journal entries without any introspection. It was like, I woke up at 6 a.m., had breakfast, went to practice. I had class at 8:30 and so on. And that these athletes had lunch at Chipotle was just never compelling to me as a listener. And Rosenkrantz wants her subjects to do exactly that. Just reflect on, really just chronicle what they did that day and see where it takes them. So right away, as the movie's beginning and I begin to see that, I'm thinking, why? What's the big question? What's the big question Rosenkrantz wants to investigate? And by extension, then, what is Sachs investigating? Will one or more big questions emerge? And at one point, the characters do, Josh, address it themselves. When Hujar acknowledges that he's shocked at how much he has talked about just the first few hours of his day since he woke up, he realizes that until he was actually forced to document it, he kind of just assumed that what he did every day was really innocuous and disposable, that nothing really happened. And he says, isn't that interesting? And she says, it really is. He says, because as soon as I started, it's like a whole novel already. And she says, that's why I'm doing it. So it's almost like the aphorism, the unexamined life is not worth living. But what the movie proposes is it's more like life is worthy when examined, is how I would sort of turn it around. Mm-hmm. And other interesting insights emerge. He talks about being disappointed with pictures he had taken that day of Allen Ginsberg for the New York Times. It's an assignment, a photo shoot, when he looked at them. And there's this meta layer because he discusses how that matches what the film is doing, right? Where he talks about how you only see qualities in the photos, positive and negative, when the photo is actually printed and you're studying it. You see things then that you weren't aware of when you actually staged it and took the shot. And so then I started thinking about Rosencrantz, and I started thinking about the way she's looking at him and the way that she adores him, it seems, and the precision almost with which she's listening to him. And she does kind of become an equal to Hujar in terms of the way she fills the space and the way Sachs has her fill the space, even though she's not filling it with words, and the way sometimes there's a real tenderness between them, and they will show affection for each other, and they'll talk sometimes laying on a bed and have real intimacy with each other. And like with his pictures, he says at one point that he thinks women take better pictures than men do. And so then I'm thinking, is she getting better audio from him because she's a woman? Or is it because they're already so comfortable with each other? Or is it both? And so what you realize, or what I realized anyway, watching it, is that Peter Hujar's Day doesn't ask big questions. It creates an ephemeral, meditative space that invites them. It turns the quiet observation into introspection, and it kind of reveals how meaning can emerge from memory and just paying attention to details, and also art. I think it lies in Sax's conception of this whole project as well, because he makes you question everything that you're seeing. Sometimes Linda changes within a scene, Josh. It's really interesting. Like her costume will change within a conversation. Not only will they change positions, but her costume will change. Her hair might change. The composition will go from something very naturalistic to something that is more artistically framed. The opening and the closing of the film draw attention to the mechanism of filming. Like at the beginning, Wishaw, if I remember correctly, is getting into an elevator. I think you see the sticks as if you know that filming on this project has begun. So it's asking these questions like, how do we process and create meaning out of our lives? How do we use art to create meaning? How do we use cameras? How do we use frames? That's the intersection of what Sachs is doing and what Hujar was doing and what Rosencrantz was doing. So watching the film, I was left thinking about what I was also, here's the questions, right? I was thinking about what I tell my students, and either they're not Linda Rosencrantz, or their interviewees aren't Peter Hujar, or athletes aren't as interesting as artists, or maybe I'm just wrong and I should let my students engage in this process more often, Josh.
Well, we'll leave that to your teacher evaluations, Adam. I'm not going to answer that, but
exactly.
Peter Hujar's Days sounds fascinating. A lot of layers at work. This one is currently playing in limited release. And Adam, that means after touching on four movies, I think we are at the end of our show. If you'd like to connect with us on social media, you can find Adam and the show on Instagram, Facebook, Letterboxd. YouTube, he's at Film Spotting. I'm at all those places, as well as Larson on Film. Film Spotting is independently produced and listener supported. You can support the show by joining the Film Spotting family at filmspottingfamily.com. That way you can listen early and ad-free. You'll also get a weekly newsletter, monthly bonus episodes, and access to the entire show archive. For show t-shirts and other merch, go to filmspotting.net/shop.
In that Film Spotting archive, you can find those 7 Del Toro reviews that I referenced in our Frankenstein setup. Pinocchio, episode 901, Nightmare Alley, 853, The Shape of Water, 659, Crimson Peak, 560. That's the one of the 7 that you did solo, Josh. I still haven't seen it. One of my 4 blind spots. Pacific Rim, 453, Hellboy 2, 218, and Pan's Labyrinth, 145. Hellboy 2 is funny because I had written my entire intro 2 or 3 days ago, and then I just saw this document that Sam put together with these notes in it earlier today, and I had to go and rewrite part of my intro because I thought I had 5 blind spots. I was sure I had 5 blind spots, and that Hellboy 2 had not been reviewed on the show. There were only 6 movies that had been reviewed on the show, and then I did a search of my Google files, and guess what? I've seen Hellboy 2. We reviewed Hellboy 2. I liked Hellboy 2. Sometimes you learn new things from your own show.
It didn't stick in your imagination though that much, huh?
It did not, apparently. Out wide, you can see Christy. You can also see Lynn Ramsey's Die My Love. Russell Crowe as Hermann Göring in Nuremberg. We haven't talked about that. I don't know that we'll get to review it. I am curious. I want to see it. I'm a little bit curious about Dan Trachtenberg directing Predator Badlands with Elle Fanning. But next week, we do have other films that we are more curious about, like Begonia, Kelly Reichert's The Mastermind, and Jafar Panahi's It Was Only an Accident, but Die My Love is also on the docket. So hopefully 4 more movies to hear us discuss.
Film Spotting is produced by Golden Joe Dassault and Sam Van Halgren. Without Sam and Golden Joe, this show wouldn't go. Our production assistant is Sophie Kempenaar. Special thanks to everyone at WBEZ Chicago. More information is available at wbez.org. For Film Spotting, I'm Josh Larson.
And I'm Adam Kempenaar. Thanks for listening.
This conversation can serve no purpose anymore. Goodbye.